Good evening. Our chairman has a 10 to 15-minute lateness due to the fact of his transportation from Boston broke down. So we're going to have at least a 10-minute continuance before we do anything.
It's like recess.
A recess, so we'll have a 10-minute recess right now, and hopefully by then he'll be here. Otherwise, we may have to continue it a few more minutes after that.
Okay.
All right?
Is what
Thank
it
you very
is.
much.
No problem.
Are
Makeup.
we on CNN or what?
We can increase it for another 10 minutes that Andrew has just showed at the train station in Southborough, and he should be here within 10 minutes. So we're going to increase it until 20 after 7.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, the other issue is Mr. Heavy has a agenda for 7:30, and most likely that's going to be continued until probably 8 o'clock or a little bit later, sir. Okay? So you, just so you know that. Okay, thank you.
our ZBA meeting. I want to apologize for being so late. I was on a train that broke down and then had to get pushed by another train. So, first item on the agenda is an application for
Lover's Lane.
a variance for 11 Lovers Lane. Karen, can you please read the hearing notice?
The Board of Appeals of the Town of Southborough will hold a public hearing in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room of the Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, on Wednesday, September 27th, 2017, at 7 p.m. with regard to the petition of Mr. Dirk Meath and Miss Jamie Meath, 11 Lovers Lane, Southborough, Mass. 01772. The petitioners
We'll get
are
to it.
seeking relief in the form of a variance for a 15.3-foot encroachment to construct a 24 by 36 home addition. Relief requested is pursuant to section 174-8.2D, 3C, side setbacks 25 feet. A copy of the application may be reviewed at the office of the Building Department located at 9 Corderville Road, Southborough, Mass. During normal business hours. Andrew R. Dennington, Chairman.
First, are you the Meaths?
Yes.
The Meese, yeah.
Okay,
Rhymes with teeth.
okay.
Yeah.
And
Also an approval.
so, would like to make a presentation?
Yeah, that would be great. So, hello, board members. This will be quick. Hello, board members. I'm Dirk Meath. This is my lovely wife, Jamie Meath of 11 Lovers Lane. Thank you for hearing our variance request this evening. We greatly appreciate it. We live in our house at 11 Lovers Lane. We've been living there for about 11 years and have 2 children of ages 9 and 5 and 2 very large dogs, if you care. We are seeking this variance to add onto our house for our growing family and to essentially make this our forever home in the town of Southborough. We ask for this variance to be granted as we have met the burdens required by section 174-25A. In our letter of support, we have stated hardships relating to soil conditions, shape and topography of the land that particularly affects our land but does not affect the land in the zone in which it is located. In this letter, we have shown substantial hardships that would result from literal enforcement of the ordinance bylaw. We will be unable to improve our property, similar to other properties in the same zone, if this variance is not granted. Due to the contour and layout of our land and the existing septic system, this is the only suitable area for the addition. So if you look at our property shape on the plot on page 5, you can see that we're essentially a bunch of triangles kind of joined together, if you're looking at it from an aerial view, whereas pretty much all the other properties within our zone are somewhat square-shaped. So just wanted to point that out. The proposed addition only makes our home more compatible with other similar homes in the zone. The proposed addition will not be visible from abutting dwellings due to very thick woods year-round and hilly topography offering year-round coverage. Similar variances have been issued recently by the board as referenced in the letter in support. In those cases, the proposed building was more visible to neighboring properties, and those requests were also made for more conventionally shaped lots. In the present case, we have shown circumstances particularly affecting our property, the shape contours, that creates this hardship. We have no other options to add needed living area to our home due to the odd shape of the lot, the contours of the land, and the location of the septic system. The board may grant this variation without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating the intent or purpose of the town's zoning bylaw. There is no harm to the community from this proposed variation, and the abutting property value will not be affected due to the location of the proposed addition. So no detriment to the community. In conclusion, we ask that the board should grant the request for the variance requested by us. In our opinion, we have no alternatives, and we've really explored them all, that do not require a variance to add needed living space to our home. Variances to give are really intended to give relief to landowners that have unique circumstances. Again, unique circumstances, which I think we have, with their land not typically found in other land in the zone, have no alternatives, and have suffered hardship due to ordinance. Here we have demonstrated a hardship, shown a unique circumstance with the land, and there are no alternatives. The The variance is not opposed by any members of the community, and if granted, we will have no negative impact on the community or abutting properties. Considering the reasons stated herein, we respectfully suggest that the board grant the request for setback variance sought at 11 Lovers Lane. Thank you.
Karen, did we get letters in support or in opposition? And
Do you have a copy of it?
In addition to the letter, we also have two neighbors, direct neighbors. Jamie, if you want to introduce.
Demetria and Ekaterina Stadnik, who came to support.
where, what address are you at?
That is 9 Lovers Lane.
Okay. Anyone else?
And so we also have an email from James and Sarah Pelletier of 15 Lovers Lane. And they say, "We hope this finds you well. This letter is to formally state our support for the variance application filed by Dirk and Jamie Meath of 11 Lovers Lane. As their immediate next-door neighbor, we have taken a specific interest in this appeal. After speaking at length with the Meaths as to their plans for an addition and after walking the property to review the lot lines, we believe approval of their petition is a smart and logical conclusion. It is our belief that the proposed addition to 11 Lovers Lane will have no detrimental impact to any of the abutting lots, nor the character of the neighborhood. We see no reason to deny their appeal and hope the ZBA comes to the same finding. If you would be so kind to relay this message to the board, it would be much appreciated. We are happy to discuss this matter with any members of the ZBA. Sincerely, James and Sarah Pelletier, 15 Lovers Lane."
Okay, at this point, want to open up to questions from the board for the applicant. Debbie, you have any questions?
Hi there. Thanks for that. I have sort of two lines of thinking. The first is on your plans, and I was wondering if you can tell me what is the use of the property, the intended construction, is it one level or two, how many rooms?
Yep. So it's,
What is
yeah,
it?
sure. It's a one-level property. Currently, I work remote, and so does my wife. So my wife works out of the house, and I have to rent from Regis. So I incur that cost personally. So this would be to essentially give my wife and I a little buffer when working at home. In addition to that, our kids are growing, so we have 2 kids, 9 and 5. We have 2 very large dogs. Our house square footage is under 2,800 square feet. If you look at the other houses, within our neighborhood, many of which exceed the 4,000 square foot mark. The Haciendoses are across the street from us. I think they have like a total of 100,000 square feet on the property. No, just kidding. But yeah, so those are the general purposes, and just additional living space as our family expands.
Okay. And can you describe, so from the pictures, it looks like there's a lot of buffer, there's a lot of trees. Can you describe how much buffer there would be, or maybe it's on one of our maps, if you build there?
Yeah. So on page 8, and they're not numbered after 6, but so if you go 6, 7, 8, there's a picture that kind of gives you an aerial view of some of the neighbors, and just gives you a sense of the Pelletiers are actually on the opposite side, and as you heard, they had a letter in support. But these 2 properties really, I think, give you a sense. Google Maps aerial views, just kind of the denseness and the thickness of the woods. I mean, even when all the leaves are down, you can't see anything. 11 Blackthorn, that's on the other side. But I actually put like another picture in the bottom right-hand corner, which didn't come out too good in black and white, but it shows the topography. And essentially, from where the proposed addition site is, the hill goes up, and then it goes down sharply. So like, even if, I took one of the pictures, if you go, it's the second to last page, the picture at the bottom 3 side, proposed building site is what it's labeled. That's a picture looking out the 2nd-story window over the shed towards 11 Lovers Lane. Even there, you can't see anything, so there's no line of sight. So again, it's really thick woods year-round. Obviously thicker, in season than off, but there's so many trees that, you can't even see through it.
Would you be
on,
taking down any trees then to do the
In this,
construction?
yeah, no, not with this addition, no.
Okay, and I just wanted to confirm where the septic is on the lot?
Yep, so the septic is, the best picture to show it, again, if we go back to the outward views, it's the third to last page, which would be page 11 on the included documents. If you look at picture 4, which is to the left, it says backyard, and then it points to septic tank.
Okay.
So it's right there. I mean, again, if you look at some of the earlier pictures, we use Google Maps, and then I know the town uses maps online. So that's used in the earlier pictures to depict some of the topography, if you look through there. But there's really no flat plot of land on our property.
And on
except
the
for warehouse
right
and
is a
stuff.
garage, is that, to the, it looks like there's room on the right, but I see that your driveway goes over there, it looks like maybe that's the
Yeah,
attached
that's-
garage over there?
The driveway, we can hardly turn around 2 cars.
Okay,
Yeah,
And then the front yard it goes about
steep.
8 feet out, and then it just like drops down. Great for sledding, horrible for building.
okay. And yours is an unusual piece, shape, and you have direct abutters. I was wondering also if you've talked to the neighbors on Blackthorn. It looks like number 9 and number 11 are really gonna be closest to
I
the
think-
dwelling.
Are you guys 9?
11.
So
11.
they're number 11. I don't know.
We talked to Tarang and his wife before the meeting, and we had some communication before. So we talked about it, but
Right. But if you guys want to say anything?
No, I guess we have fine.
And we don't know the other, I mean, we sent out the letters,
Yeah.
but we didn't speak with them.
And, okay.
it's so separated. It's not, like a traditional neighborhood. And
Yeah.
plus, that's like Blackthorn's like a whole different neighborhood.
You have to go
our street.
from where the addition is, you literally have to go up a hill and then go down to get to Blackthorn.
Okay, and you have a 2-level house right now, so then this would be a 1-level
Correct. This would be one level. Yep.
addition. So I did some calculations on the what I think is the existing footprint, and then the proposed with the addition. Do you have those numbers as well? the
Roughly,
calculations?
yeah. I can do the math real quick for exact numbers. Just not to misstate. So if I do the math, 24 times 36, I come up with 864 square feet. As I said, our house, I
It's
believe
just under
officially is
2,800.
2780.
27, I don't know, 2780, yeah, somewhere, it's like just under 2,800 square feet.
So this will be about a third of the new of the total proposed.
Yeah, a little
overall.
less, but yeah.
Can't confirm the
So-
math, but yeah, sounds about right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no
Dave?
more questions.
Hi, yeah, so I was actually checking on the septic as well, but Debbie stole my thunder. But the front yard, how far do you kind of extend from your front door, let's say, before it starts to really drop off?
It's about 8 feet.
8 feet,
8
and then,
There's enough for a pathway to just come from the driveway
driveway?
up to the top. But I
Okay.
mean, where our house stands is literally, the footprint is the only flat property on the land. I mean, the original builder, we were the second owners of the house. I mean, you can tell that the original builder knew exactly how to, build it in the least expensive way, with the least amount of land. He just seemed like a smart guy.
okay. And just regarding the topography a little bit, so I think Debbie's right in that 11 and 13 are pretty impacted, but I can see that their structures, their homes are pretty far away. How exactly, like from 11, I mean, are they going uphill?
Do you mean 11
Okay.
Blackthorn?
I'm sorry,
I got it.
11 Blackthorn,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So
If
So I
you could
have
just talk about
yeah,
that
I have
topography
a
a little bit.
So again, if we're just going off of the number pages, if we go, so 6, 7, 8, that's 11 Blackthorn right there. It's noted on page 8. And by estimate, to the edge, this is just using Google Maps to get a rough feel of it, but it's, 300 feet. Again, in that bottom right-hand corner, that's another topography map, but the property goes, like, from where we propose to do the addition, it goes up, straight, and then straight down.
Okay, so that's really what I was looking
Right.
for, is what their view is. It sounds to me like
You're up.
you go out of the back of their house.
Correct.
It's gonna go uphill.
Yeah.
What you have is basically on
Sub-
the other side of the
Yes.
hill.
Sub the hill,
Correct.
crest top.
Okay, and for, I guess that would be 9 Blackthorn is next door? I mean, that's kind of, with the one that comes to a point where it touches your, is that 9?
Yeah,
So the bottom there, on page 8, that's 9. It's even further away.
Yeah, that
quite frankly,
house is really far away, but is the hill similarly
Yes,
impacting them?
that whole thing. I
you,
mean,
you literally can't.
we're on a
see
ski
anything
slope.
ever.
Yeah, okay.
We're on like the
Alright.
bottom backside. We're like on the bottom backside of a ski slope.
And-
And they're in the
and
base lodge.
If if you kind of look at this,
Some topo lines on this one.
yeah. That's, and from the picture, I wanted to understand
Yeah.
how that front looked
There's,
a little bit better too.
So I took a picture. The second to last page
Yep.
is actually a Google Street View, the bottom right hand corner. It's not from 9, but it's from 11. Just looking there, and you can see kind of how the trees rise up
Right,
on
right.
the top of that hill.
So if I look at this, this map you've got 9 Lover's Lane and 15 Lover's Lane, your direct abutters on Lover's Lane both support this. The one who has that touches your property the most otherwise and is impacted by the house the most support this, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I've hiked back there. I can't,
Yeah.
it's hard to even
Can't.
see.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you really know what you're looking for.
okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Have you done all the design of this, or you just?
I've done
In our
initial,
heads.
initial design.
I mean, because typically we see, plans, or
Yeah,
proposed plans.
My understanding was that we would first go for the variance if it was accepted based on the addition, the dimensions, and even what had been denied, which was a procedure denial through the building inspector, that we were okay. We're actually using a prefabricated structure, so it is it's those are the dimensions.
Typically, we see, am I right, we usually see, we're not just all giving a blind variance, we usually
It's-
see what is being.
It is depicted in,
Well, you show like on this one, you're delineating, the footprint of where that's going. But, so most of the time, we see what is actually being built and how it's being built, and, that usually answers a lot of
yeah, that would make
a lot of
sense.
questions. I mean, even like roof line there, I mean, that's gonna be runoff, so like, where's the water gonna go? Or how's that, like, is there
The only way it
any-
can go is downhill.
well, downhill goes to the, to the neighbors.
Not,
I think no, it'll actually go on us.
Yeah, it all goes
Well,
through.
like, if you look at this, I mean, I can see, you got some topo lines here on this like one
Mhm.
thing, so I can see, yeah, you're at the plateau. I mean, I can, kind of read this. I can't read what all the readings are, but I can follow the lines, and when they're close together, that means it's steep. So I can tell that, yes, off your front yard, it's steep up the hill. I can see where there's an area where it's all the same, so
Sure.
that's,
Right.
so I'm following all that's the flat area, and that's where you want to put the addition. But yeah, I mean, if you go, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good question about the
how is-
water.
How is, like,
Yeah.
drainage, how is?
Yeah, water usually flows, downhill. And the two properties that it would potentially affect have given consent to that. So I wouldn't imagine it's an issue based on what they've said.
I mean, I think something should be in there that it's being, and that's why we usually see, like, a set of plans.
Yeah,
So then okay, this is where, this is where the roof
Right.
is, this is how the roof
Sure.
line is, this is where the water's gonna go, and you can sort of get a sense of that. So I think there needs to be, something to,
I think honestly is that we weren't told we needed to come with a set of plans, and I also think we also thought that once we got the variance, it would still have to go through the building inspector. and that obviously he'd have to sign off on everything and make sure it was status quo.
That was how it was presented
Yeah.
to multiple parties that we talked to.
But I mean, I fully understand what
Yeah.
you're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
and-
totally, yeah.
And how you're, going about doing it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I agree I agree with your assessment of the X's here, that
Mhm.
there's,
Yeah,
you couldn't do it on, either elevation. That's the only
Right.
side of the house that this would,
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
But,
no, it's a good question.
that's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Barlini?
Yes. I walked the property yesterday, and the water issue is no issue. Their house is high, everything over in here is low, and these are back high again. And this house, you barely can see it from the road. So what he's going to build for an addition, I don't think, even in the wintertime, if any of their butters are gonna be able to see it. And you're not gonna be able to see it from the road at all. So I don't think anything with the particular addition is anything that's gonna affect the neighborhood or the neighbors at all. I really don't. Because the way it's located, it's up high, and I would say it's almost 250 feet above the road, isn't it?
That's a good guess.
Yeah,
That's a great guess, yeah.
It's about that,
It's-
higher
it's
than the
far.
road, it's up that high. And it's, you can't see it from the road or anything, and the other houses are all that far away in different locations. So I don't think it would be an addition that would be affecting anything at all. I don't have a problem with it.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions that haven't
Thank
already
you.
been covered. Anyone else want to comment on this from the public? And I think it would be helpful if you, sir and ma'am, you live on Blackthorn, just identify yourselves and your street address so we can get it for the,
You have
the
to use
record.
that microphone over
or,
there. sir.
or you can give her
One of these if
that
you
microphone, yeah.
So we are Tarang Jain and Gaurya Jain from 11 Blackthorn.
How do you spell your name?
Tarang, it's T-S Tom, A-R-A-N-G.
Could you, Karen needs to get it.
A-R-A-N-G.
Okay,
Yep, and my wife is Gaurya, G-A-U-R-I-Y-A. So we live on 11 Blackthorn and.
11 Blackthorn.
Right. Uh,
Okay,
And we don't see any issues with the proposed.
thank you.
I mean, again, if
And did you want to,
that water-
Hello, so my name is Dmitry Stadnik, and this is my wife Ekaterina Stadnik, and we don't have any objections. We live on 9 Lovers Lane.
okay,
Make a motion, sir, we close the public hearing.
anyone have any questions further questions before we deliberate?
I just have a comment, and actually just wanted to bring up something that, Paul, I thought the same thing about a construction plan, because the proponent actually mentioned a previous approval, 168, I can't remember the middle. And when I went back and looked, I noticed they had a set of plans. So I pulled out the variance application form, and it does say, there's a checklist for submission, and it does say the details of the proposed construction that's related to the application, including any necessary supporting calculations. And I would just say, perhaps in the future, maybe we can just make sure that the applications are complete, because I do think that that helps to address any questions that we might have. I guess it could be a sketch. I'm not saying you have to spend a lot of money, but I think it's on that form for a reason, that it helps us to make a determination.
Andrew, I'd almost say the same thing. I guess if it's not clear, I can follow what's going on because,
Right.
well, I kind of do a bunch of this stuff, so, but if you don't, if you don't do this, you might not be following, I guess.
So the issue is there's a variance plan which shows where, but there's not an architectural drawing.
Right, that's just showing a footprint. It's most of the, I think we had something a little while back off Lovers for a garage expansion or something, and, there was a full set of plans. This is the garage we're building, this is, then you get into question, is there lighting, is there, all that type of stuff.
I would think the major issue would be for a full plan, would be under some normal license issues that we have. But this particular issue, nobody can see it. You can't. So, I mean, whatever they build really is unnecessary. The building inspector's going to approve it and everything. But, and the abutters here are saying the same thing. They don't have any issues with it. So there's nothing that can be, that publicly is going to be able to be seen anyways. You know?
What if they put a
But
cupola
if
on it and it goes over the
if-
height restriction?
If it was being built next to another house that was right next door, then
We don't know.
that would be something that people would otherwise, but it's not technically necessary by our board.
But as far, they still have to comply with all the other building requirements, right? We're just,
With the
the
building
only variance we would be granting here is the setback. Everything else is
Just waiving
full
the setback
compliant,
requirement.
fully
I-
compliant with the building
I don't know how Mark
requirements.
does this, but, I mean, I kind of trust his judgment on if there's additional documentation necessary to,
plans
Ye-
required.
yeah,
He comes with building permit,
yeah.
as well as his variance documented. Yeah, they'll have to provide plans, but they just gave you on the sketch the 24 by 36,
And
location.
If it was an issue, he would send it back in front of us, too.
So is there is there a consensus either way? I mean, I'll say I'm in support of it. I think, it's not enough just to have the odd-shaped lot. You do have to have some hardship, and you spoke to it about, the need for your family for additional space. Just one comment I would make, the other variances we've granted aren't necessarily like a precedent of, and on the one particular one in Middle Road, I was against it just because I found really nothing distinguishing about it. So these are some of the hardest ones we have to deal with, of just kind of ordinary variances for home additions in the garage. But, I think you've made a good presentation, and I don't see any conditions that would be needed for it. So is anyone opposed to this?
No, can I just get one question of clarification? You said this is a single-story addition, right? It's not two?
Correct.
That's it.
So,
I don't see any conditions so someone want to make a motion?
I'd
Well,
like
first
to
we need
make a
to close the
motion to
public
close
hearing.
the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Okay,
I would also make a motion to approve the request that's in front of the zoning board of appeals.
I'll
for the
second that.
variance.
all those in favor? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. And so the next item on the agenda
Thank you.
is request by Woodland Meadows LLC. And this is a 40B project that's already been permitted and is, as most of you know, already in the process of being built. And I guess Mark Robidoux is requiring them to come before us because there's something about what they want to do that arguably doesn't comply with the plan. So under the 40B regs, we sit and we determine whether this is a substantial change or an insubstantial change. And I did have Karen give out the regulations that explain what is the difference between substantial and insubstantial, and I'm sure the applicant's attorney will probably speak to that too. So that kind of sets the stage here. If you want to
The
make
other-
a,
Excuse me, before we go that far, the other issue is, at the last meeting we had, this discussion was done, and the issue that happened was, for some reason, it didn't get written in our decision or anything also. But this particular issue that is here was discussed prior to tonight's meeting also.
well, let's first hear from the applicant and what you're looking to do, and then we'll have a discussion and see if there's any comment on it.
And what's happened in the future.
All right, good evening. I'm Mark Kablek. I'm an attorney. My office is in Westborough, Mass. I'm here representing Woodland Meadows LLC. They are the applicant and developer of Woodland Meadows. With me tonight is Robert Heavey. He is the manager of Woodland Meadows, and we have been with this project for a number of years. We're about halfway through. This is a 16-unit 40B development of townhomes off of Oak Street. We're just uphill of the, I think it's a Walgreens?
Yeah.
Which is on Route 9. We're about halfway through the project. There are 8 units constructed and phased in. We're about to have our 7th unit closing, so we're about halfway through the 16 units. Mr. Bartolini is correct. We appeared before this board almost exactly a year to the day last year for a similar request for an insubstantial change. The 40B regulations have two mechanisms to change a 40B permit once approved. One is a material or substantial change, in which case the board would actually hold a hearing and formally amend the comprehensive permit if it decided to approve it. That type of substantial change is outlined in the regulations as one that is really of material significance, having to do with the concerns, for example, that the board might have had when it initially issued its comprehensive permit. So increase in density, if you were concerned about building height, changes in the building height, things of that nature. The regs also point out what are insubstantial changes. So slight modifications of buildings, reduction in density, or the change in the ownership of the project would be some examples of an insubstantial change. So we're actually here tonight for our second request for an insubstantial change. The first request for the insubstantial change a year ago had to do with the fact that there were a number of plans that were presented to the board in the initial permitting process, and then after we went to the Housing Appeals Committee in the remand. And in the process of finalizing those plans, the units that are actually on the uphill side were reversed. In other words, the front of the unit was toward the back, and the back of the unit was toward the front, and that is not, in fact, what we desired to build. And so the change there was simply to have the board sign or endorse the correct plan. During that hearing, or meeting, because it wasn't a hearing, the board did render a decision that it was both an insubstantial change and then approve the insubstantial change. So it's actually a two-step process. The same would be done tonight. In that discussion, we talked, because the difference in the front and the back of the unit was that the front has an entry door and a front porch, and the back of the units have a slider door and either an at-grade patio or a deck. And there was some discussion at that time about the 10-foot setback, which the board had granted in the initial comprehensive permit, and whether the steps or the decks or the patios were within that 10 feet. And because we were not as far along as we are today, despite the fact that we raised this as an issue, the board's interpretation was, let's go further along, let's see, in essence, an as-built plan and see exactly where these features are relative to the property line. So, since we are farther along, and since the plan that we submitted as part of this application shows both the existing units and the next proposed units on the Walgreens side, we are before you tonight because we know exactly what's going on with respect to these structures. The town's bylaw has a very broad interpretation of structure. And so, you know, bulkheads, stairs, overhangs, dormers, arguably all come within the gambit of what a structure would be. So in this case, we have arguably structures that are part of the unit that are within the 10-foot setback. And the application tonight is to describe what those are and to have this board render a decision in the first instance that this change is insubstantial, and in the second instance to grant approval. The units, all of the units, meaning the main aspect of the units, still meet the 10-foot setback requirement. On this board, which is a copy of the plan that we submitted, you'll see Oak Hill Road. Walgreens is down here. Route 9 is up in this location. The units that are on the uphill side of the property have a small rear entry to a slider.
Do you want to come around and see that, or?
Yeah, we'd like to see them too.
I could,
We used to always have things that
Do we have an easel thing, or?
I could hold it.
Okay.
These pictures depict the uphill side of the property. The units.
You need to take the mic with you, sir. Take that mic with you.
Where Karen's standing.
Use that mic at the
it's just
con.
hard to hear in this room anyways because of the.
Take the whole The pictures are of the units on the uphill side of the property. The fence is recently installed. It was one of the requirements of the comprehensive permit. And the relief for the units on the uphill side is for the small stairway that goes into the slider. It comes off the ground, I think, 2 steps, so it's slightly under 24 inches, and it's presented in this picture here. It's now highlighted on the plan here. So those steps are within the 10 feet. They come into that 10-foot setback a couple of feet, 2 feet, and arguably they're structures as your zoning bylaw defines them. And so what we'd like tonight is for you to determine that that's insubstantial.
Excuse me one second.
Yes.
So you're saying it's highlight, the thing I'm seeing highlighted is on the Walgreens side? Not,
Yes,
That's the existing ones. that
I'm
we-
first going on the uphill side. I'll get to the Walgreens side in a
but you
second.
said highlighted on the plan, that's,
I'm referring to the highlight on this plan now.
okay.
So I'm referring to these units here.
But this is the same, that's the same thing that we have here,
Yes.
okay.
It's better
Yeah,
just to refer to the unit numbers, I think we can, you know.
Yeah, so we're referring to units 11, 12, 13, and 14. That's on the uphill side, and those are shown in the pictures here.
On the south side of the property.
Correct.
12, 13, and 14.
Yes, it's on the south side or uphill side of the property, and it's units 11, 12, 13, and 14.
The major issue that started this was the width of the property. And that's from Oak Hill into the end of the 3rd unit at number 12, is the thing that we agreed to increase the closeness to the property line because of the width of the parking lots in the front. On the building that you show the picture in your drawing, which is the one next to Walgreens, the first one, if you look at it, that building on one end is closer, the other end of it is not closer. And what has happened is the property line is wider. And the further down, they do not have to be as close to the property line anymore than what they are. And this is making the driveway wider and better access in and out at the beginning of this property. And it was the reason why in the beginning we approved it on the other 2 units that we did across the street. The next units that come in after will be farther apart from the property line. And sir, you agree when I'm,
Yes, it gets better as you
Get
go
the
deeper
plan.
into the property.
and the original drawings that we have, it shows that.
And it's, we have pictures of the units on the uphill or south side because those units exist.
And the major issue is the difference in this is the budding commercial property and not residential property at all.
So right now, if we move to the north side, which is the Walgreens side, this is a proposed unit, and the relief that is requested is just for one of the units, and that is Unit 3, and that is shown in highlight here.
Yep.
And the other issue is the Walgreen driveway, where the wall is on closer than where it should be, but it's there, it doesn't matter. But the tree line that is in the center of the roadway, the trees are about 15 to 20 feet high, and in another 10 years, they'll be 30 feet high, and they're basically gonna cover up these units very nicely, which will make them very, more comfortable than they will be the way they are presently, because you're not gonna see them as much, because the trees, which when we did the original decision to have certain trees planted on the property line, on the beginning section, we couldn't do it because it was too tight. But the Walgreens trees got planted at the same time when they built, and they have, they're just gonna
So,
make it look nice.
so what you're saying is substantial here is, that's a patio, correct, that's highlighted?
The
What you're saying is.
part that's highlighted on the south side,
On the we're back on the north side.
on the north side, that's a deck. That is a raised deck.
That's a raised deck?
Yes. Different than the patios on the south side.
The way the
So you're saying so if I'm looking at that correctly, you go up the steps, and then you go to a landing, and then you go up more steps to a deck? Is that the?
Yes.
Okay, I was looking at that backwards. I thought that was at ground level, and you go
No.
up steps to, okay, all right.
Yeah, the property pitches down, so you're actually, the property pitches
Oh, yeah,
down.
I
Yeah.
was looking at, all
And
right.
this
So-
one here is not close
And the
to
one that is
property.
highlighted on these things you're saying are within the 10-foot?
Correct.
Because it's,
Yeah, and as you go
It's not.
back, as we go back in deeper into the property,
Okay.
the way the lot expands, it's no longer an issue.
how far into the 10-foot does that actually go?
Bob, for this one?
2 feet, because it doesn't look like, I don't know what the scale is here, but it doesn't, oh, down there.
It's actually 2 feet on one side, and the way it widens, by the time you get to the opposite side of that deck.
Right, I can see that, so I'm following all that, yeah. Okay.
So again, the units themselves, the vertical walls of the unit are compliant. It's just these entry decks or entry features that are within the 10 feet. And so, again, we have pictures here of the units that exist, and you can see the extent of it in this picture here.
But that unit is that's the south side.
Again, that's the south
And
side.
that's a smaller stairwell going up.
Correct. And
None
then,
of these,
and those, and the ones on the north side don't exist yet.
correct.
I think it'd be helpful if you could just go, just unit by unit, which one are you seeking relief from, for what, and how much encroachment? Just,
Well, it's just unit 3, correct?
No, no, the letter asks for relief for the encroachment on the south side for the stairway entry.
so
And-
it's helpful to me to just like unit number rather than.
Yep, and those are units 11, 12, 13, and 14. And the encroachment is a 2-step entry to the rear slider,
24 inches.
24 inches.
The other.
And
the
those
other-
are built, though.
Those are constructed.
And if I
They're
can,
So they already constructed, but.
No.
but-
Which one's a bill?
Yeah, those
Well,
are.
you're saying you
Oh,
need.
those are
Pictures of 'em.
You need relief for
These are
those.
not built.
You're saying you need relief for those, even though they're built.
Yes, because the building inspector said, we have a very broad interpretation of structures. The board may consider that a structure that's within the setback, you were supposed to meet a 10-foot setback, so you better go back and ask for them for clarification.
Andrew, can I ask for clarification? Didn't we look exactly at the south side
Yes, so we had this.
for the
conversation
exact
last year.
same thing a year ago?
Yes, we
Right.
did.
Yes.
So that,
Like I said, it did come up, but the board's decision was wait until the units are built, show us an as-built, and come back and see us then.
The other issue is I would like to bring forward too, is that when you go to do the next 2 units on the south side, I know the way the property's designed, they're back further, but I would think properly for everyone that if you came back in front of us, just so we could see it and there are no issues, that we could take care of that if there was an issue with something there.
Those units will be further away from the property line.
Right.
Because of the way the road
I
goes.
understand that, but I've seen them on the
Yeah.
drawing, because the whole property is wider.
so I want you to just complete, so units 11, 12, 13, 14, you're asking us to determine that it's an insubstantial change to have a 2-foot step entry into the rear,
No, you're wrong, Andrew.
well,
Yes.
that's correct,
That's
right?
correct.
These
That's what
are
he's
already
asking
done,
for.
approved by us.
Right, but
This 2 units here.
No,
So-
no, no, you need 2
Yeah.
votes tonight. You need 2 votes tonight. You need to approve both sides this evening. This side, even though this was discussed last year, there needs to be a formal vote on.
But we did approve that already.
So we discussed it, but we didn't approve it.
So,
'Cause I
hold
remember
on,
discussing it.
hold on. So, I
Yes,
just want you to.
may I clarify this?
Well,
from-
let's just go back to, you talked about 11, 12, 13, 14, and then you're also looking for relief on unit 3, right?
Correct.
And that's the only one on the Walgreens side, right?
Yes.
And what are you looking for unit 3?
Yes, and so on the north side, one of the proposed units, Unit 3,
Yeah,
has a small portion of the proposed deck that is within the 10-foot setback, again by about 24 inches. The lot line expands as you get into the lot, and so that is the only lot on the north side of the property that needs this relief.
that's all I need to know, thanks.
And just to clarify, the two votes that we need tonight is the first vote that the change is insubstantial, and the second vote that the change is acceptable.
Right, but both sides are addressed this evening, formally addressed.
Right, for a total of 5 units.
Yeah, that's all.
Prior to tonight.
And again, we discussed these units last year, but the board asked us to come back with an as-built, and so that's why those units have been
We, the
shown.
board?
Yes, you, the board. It was.
We looked at it, I know we discussed it.
It
but
was
we asked-
September, it was actually like September 28th, almost exactly a year ago.
Okay.
And it was discussed at the meeting, and it was looked at on TV. It just
yep.
never got written.
I see. I thought we,
Okay, anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I do not have any questions.
The only thing I have is the one that, in the future, the next 2 units, that they agree they would come back in front of us.
Debbie, do you have any questions?
Hold on, why would they, I don't think there's any reason for them to come back, because everything else will be after, except for this one, those are built, so we know
Right.
it's built. Number 3, to use Andrew's number,
The next
number
2
3
here,
is
the
the,
next 2 here.
are they gonna have encroachment issues?
What? They could, it's next to the abutters, and it's close, so it's
Oh, well,
something that
I
we
would
just asked them to come in front of us.
I would say clearly, just to be in line with what we're doing tonight, if we have an encroachment issue, we would be back before you
Okay.
It
to
should not
clarify.
be a major issue.
Okay.
Right, I mean, again, like, when you add those units, you'll be back to be subject to the building inspector. If you have an encroachment, you have to come back before us. Right. No, I mean, I do recall covering this pretty thoroughly a year ago. I didn't realize it wasn't actually formal, so, but I don't have any questions.
I agree with everyone that, yes, I remember we talked about it, we didn't write it up. I think Mark did the right thing by being focused on the details and saying it's not clear, so you have to come back to us. And, I mean, under the regulations, you could increase the number of units up to 10%, and that would be considered insubstantial. So if you can do that, you can probably encroach, a couple feet, and it's insubstantial.
Well, I mean, those are 2 separate things, but.
No, I'm just talking about it, and I think it's an insubstantial change. That's the point that I'm
So
trying to make.
I would make a motion that
Well,
we approve.
I think,
2 of 'em.
I think that I am not in favor of that, and I think that I first want to hear any comments from members of the public.
Mr.
Would you like-
Chairman,
Yep.
you can't do that. The
You're
board has
wrong.
to vote.
You're
The bo-
wrong. You're wrong.
We've been through this before. The
Please come
board
up, please
has
come
to
up and
vote
speak. Yep.
to allow them to talk under mass housing rules and regulations, which we did this at the last meeting particular, and
Yep.
you and the
That's just
attorney
not-
was
not
here.
correct, but you have any objection to her speaking?
I don't, but Mr. Bartolini is correct, this is not a hearing.
That's correct.
It's a work session
And let me
within
just
your
explain. I know that it's not a public hearing. To me, a public hearing means we gotta advertise in the newspaper, the whole 3 weeks consecutively. Okay, it is just, so we don't have to do that. But I think that at the last meeting, we did have abutters who were unhappy about the fact that, this just shows up on a agenda on a couple days' notice, feeling like, what's the board doing? So why not at least voluntarily tell people who we know are interested about the time of the meeting and give them an opportunity to speak? I see absolutely no reason why we wouldn't,
And
why
what
we would
did-
prevent you from even talking. So I want to hear what you have to say.
What we
Thank
did,
you.
sir, we
No,
made a
I
motion.
have let her speak. You're not recognized, okay?
Board made a motion to let them speak.
Thank you. Alice Russell, 15 Oak Hill Road. We are the direct abutters to the property line on the south side. And we're greatly disappointed in this project, how it has affected our property. The last we left off at a meeting, it was going to be 15 feet from the property line. It's now 10. We didn't know about that. And so it's 10 feet. They were reversed. We didn't know about that. And then it was brought up that there was going to be a privacy fence, like the fence at Walgreens. There was going to be a screen of trees for privacy and for sound. And we have no trees. The privacy fence, you can see through. It's 8 feet up by our house, closest to the street. There's an 8-foot fence on our property line. And then it gradually goes down to 6 feet where the next houses down from us go. There is no retaining wall that was spoken of between the properties. And I have, unlike Mr. Heavey, I don't have a poster, but I did take pictures before I came to show you what it looks like from our property. Very substandard, and it has totally degraded what we've done in our property. So I think we do need to be heard.
So I agree with you, you need to be heard. I think that, you know, it looks like the unit that most affects you is Unit 15, closest to your property.
It all
And
affects
then
us, and there is no privacy. There's a fence that you can see through. It was installed on top of rocks that aren't even cemented in. There is no retaining wall. And I heard what the gentleman before us, you were speaking about buffers, what you can see. We can see their porch lights. Their second floor is down in our property. It has totally affected our property.
But it's something that's pretty much already happened, right? And so just the issue now is about
So
the, you know,
No, it's like we never
Additional
catch you
encroachment.
to stop what has already happened. And that's the problem.
This isn't, unfortunate, I understand what you're saying, but this is not the forum for that, and that's not what the agenda item is this evening. So, I mean, I think if there's things that were done improperly, I mean, that needs to be taken up with the building inspector.
We have, and it has
But
absolutely gone.
we're not the building inspector,
Okay.
so we're here to decide, you know, if something's black or if it's white.
But now you're saying it's gonna come 2 feet closer to our property line?
Well, what the
On
matter in front of us right now is what is built, is that substantial or it's insubstantial? And that's what we need to vet. And then what goes on the north side, likewise, is that something that is substantial or insubstantial to what has already been approved?
But wasn't approved the screen of trees, the privacy fence, weren't all those things approved?
It may or may not have been, but that's not what was being presented to us this evening.
I went back and looked at the permit from 2000. There was a permit, then there was a kind of a superseding permit. And I think in this Res A, you ordinarily it'd be a 25-foot setback. And because if it's a 40B, the ZBA, you can grant a waiver of those. There is a waiver granted for a 10-foot setback. So that's the 10-foot setback. And now the issue is this, it's a structure, and it's encroaching a little bit. Is that, would the board have reached a different decision, you know, in 2011 based on this? I don't think it would have. So that's why I don't think that on the issue before us, it's a substantial change.
The original discussion on that setback was 4 feet. And we were told of the project in Marlborough, which was a 40B project, which was built 4 feet on the property line. And when we discussed it all, we got it, and it was declared to be what we got it permitted for and not 4 feet. We had it a little bit, you know, farther apart.
Yeah, I'm
But
not sure I wasn't.
legally, in the state of Massachusetts, the 4-foot mark is allowed on the 40B projects. And by Marlborough, we were told, you know, to be able to see that and found that out, that it was legal for us to do it that way. But we didn't have to. Mr. Heavey agreed to make it a little bit farther apart and everything for us, and that's the way it was approved by the board. Which basically was not this board members except for me. None of yous were sitting on the board when this was approved.
I want to
And I don't think we're to say that we're not hearing what your concern is or understand. I completely understand what your comments concern are, but I do think that if an order or condition that's been placed on whatever was approved isn't being met, even that needs to be taken up with,
Right.
with the, you know, with
the
the,
building
with the building
inspector, not us.
inspector.
Right, it was, if
Which
that
we
was.
have gone several times about this. So it's not being met.
Something like we're not the
No,
building
I just don't
inspector,
know.
so there's not like,
I
there's
feel like
nothing-
we're going around in a circle because we go to him, he says, no, it's not us. We came tonight in good faith, it's not you. Who is it?
Yeah, I mean, it is I'm not not trying to throw the building inspector under the bus, but that is the building inspector's duty is to inspect what's being built. And
But
so-
what he has told us,
Sorry, do you want to get a
You
microphone?
need to
and
get on the mic, please.
Yeah, that-
Again, this is not the,
no,
this is not the
okay,
discussion
that's
item
fine.
tonight,
I
so-
understand what you're saying.
so,
I'm just
No,
saying.
we're not gonna put something in writing. This isn't what we're, you know, what we're here for. You know, you know, it's being said that that's something for the building inspector to inspect.
My understanding from him was he deals with the actual building, and anything outside the building, it
Well,
is
no, there
not
should be orders
for
and
him.
condition on what is,
Because
you
that's
know,
what was told to
allowed
us.
or not allowed to be constructed, so.
I guess, I mean, the question, I think, to help in this case would be where it would have been stated what the conditions were on the privacy fence. I mean, I don't,
But
that
again,
certainly didn't
that's-
come out of, I
That's not
understand.
the issue.
I know
That's
that's not
still
what we're
not
doing
the
here
issue
tonight, but
so we-
I'm
you
just
know,
trying to
kinda
help
going off the-
clarify.
Yeah,
I don't know if that.
I mean, I can speak to this a
Who would that
little
have come
bit.
from?
I mean, there are enumerated conditions in the permit as approved. It's quite substantial. It goes on for pages, and we're not looking to vary any of those. There is a landscape plan. There is a fence requirement. There are requirements regarding parking and width of driveway and all of that, and we intend to meet it. If we don't meet it, we have to come back before you. So at the end of this process, there is a as-built plan submission requirement back to this board, and if there is a condition that hasn't been met, that would be the time to raise it. We're not looking to vary any of the conditions other than what we've expressed tonight.
Do you have anything else you want to say in response, or?
I
understand you're frustrated, but I just think, you know, we just deal with what's before us right now.
Yeah, it would seem the best thing to do would be to find where in the building permit it would address anything about the landscaping or the privacy fence. And I think to the board's point, we're not really empowered to go through the permit here. Unfortunately, it'd be up to you to
If you could
find the
just tell
permit.
me where I could go for that information.
She should be able to see the,
I think
And
you can look at the original, the
you
permit
should be able
from
to get that from the
2011.
building department.
So the permit would be a public record,
Yeah.
so what's
It
been
is.
permitted is of public record and can be pulled and analyzed.
The other issue that we do is to ask them to come in front of us when they go to do
Yeah, okay.
the next two
We'll give you
units,
a
in
copy.
case something gets changed, or they do something that's different, that it can be looked at by us and made sure, and the building inspector. So the neighbors don't have an issue, what we've already approved, and that's what we're looking at, nothing new.
Yes?
I'm Karen Challen, 29 Oak Hill Road.
Okay.
Just a point of curiosity, because I've gone to hearings over here for over 44 years that we've lived in town. Where in the bylaws will I find a listing of the responsibilities of the building inspector, so that if he would ever give me that same answer, I could show him in the bylaws or something, some legal document belonging to the town, where it says what his job is. So I can say, no, you also have to deal with a fence that was told it would be like the Walgreens side. It's different. Bushes or trees have to go in. They aren't, you know, it's like, how do we show him that legally he has to address an issue? Where is that? Do you know where I would find that?
So, there's chapter 40A, section 7. I'm looking now at it's in the code 174-25. I'm sorry, 174-24. And see, I feel like it's not really our job to give people legal advice, but
I mean, we actually
and we
are
can
not
give you a
supposed to be
copy.
giving legal advice,
Not
so.
at all.
I can give you a copy of the permit also, which is gonna be, it's a public record anyway.
Yeah, no, mine was more about
Somewhat of a conflict of interest.
to go to somebody and they tell you that's not my responsibility, puts us, we don't know where to go. I mean, she has gone a number of times over to talk to him about different issues, and I didn't realize that she was being told, well, that's not my job. In all the times I've watched, different projects go up, I've seen our building inspector deal with everything from, did you complete the landscaping properly, and so I'm surprised that somebody would say, well, that's not my responsibility, and I just wondered, is it in writing somewhere? By definition, what the building inspector's total
I
responsibility
think the
is.
statute and the bylaw that I
Okay,
told you will.
I wrote that down then. Thank you.
Reason this is not the same as any other regulation in the town of Southborough. This is under the state 40B rules and regulations, which is under mass housing. And the zoning board has to go by the rules and regulations of mass housing, and the building inspector
Okay.
has rules and regulations of mass housing to do, which strictly go with a 40B project in our town.
So once a plan is completed and approved, there can be discrepancies because it's a 40B? If the fence is different? I know I
It
watched,
goes to
I
mass
was real
housing.
surprised that it had
that's
been
not
changed
for
to
us
wood, because when I first
Once we
went down, it
approve
was a
it,
chain link
it goes
fence
to
going
mass
up.
housing, which this was done.
And then
it's
mass
finally
housing
approved.
says it can have holes in it,
They
you can
check
see
it, they
through
change it and do
doesn't
different
have to.
things to it, and then it's done.
Wow, that was a huge issue at the hearings.
It's always been that way.
Okay, so I
And
think,
so,
I'm
it
sorry
doesn't
to cut
matter
you.
what we approve, somebody can keep going
don't-
back and having it changed and changed and changed?
I don't know.
That's interesting.
I don't know, but I just know that the one thing before us is the insubstantial change, request for an insubstantial change on units 3, 11, 12, 13, 14, 2-foot encroachment.
It-
So,
So,
As reflected on the plan. I
as
think
reflected on the plan, and our decision can reference the plan.
So I know,
Yep.
I know it's not a public hearing, but I guess maybe make a motion to close the public discussion
Sure.
on this matter.
Okay, is there a second?
I make a motion that we close the public session.
All those in favor? All right. Is there any further discussion from the board? Debbie?
I'd like to make the motion that we approve the two issues.
The,
That
Both
are,
yeah.
of them.
that it's, sure. So I think that,
The way that
we're
Andrew, you-
requesting that we approve the request that a 2-foot encroachment into the rear setback for units 11, 12, 13, 14 is an insubstantial change and acceptable to the board?
Is it only 2 feet? I thought it was more on the other ones, on south
Well,
side.
I think if
No,
we,
but
if
it's
we
not-
reference
the-
that
the
plan by
conversation's
date,
closed.
we'll be covered.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So do you,
You want
I mean,
two
the
separate-
form of our decision is just gonna be kind of a letter, I think, right, or?
Well, actually, the form that we followed last year was a notice of decision that I
Okay.
actually recorded.
Okay, all right,
And it basically said that you had a plan before you,
All
that
right.
it was insubstantial and that you approved it. And then I put that on record.
okay.
Do you want to do them individually?
I don't
Well-
think we need 5, but,
No, do the two and the other two houses. The last one and this one.
One for one side and one for the other side, or?
Yeah, so we do one approval for the south side of the property.
So, all right, I'd like to make a motion that I guess the stairway on units 11, 12, 13, and 14 are insubstantial changes and are acceptable.
as shown on the plan.
I'll second
Well,
it.
and as built.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
I request that he does the same thing now on the north side.
So then I'll make another motion that the proposed deck on Unit 3 on the north side is an insubstantial change to the plan and is acceptable.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
So who seconded that, Williams?
Yes.
And
Hold on.
I would also make a decision that in the future, that they would come back in front of us for the next 2 units on the south side
Why?
and make that in our decision.
If there's a potential change?
I know.
What if there's not, so if nothing is, if it's exactly how it was approved, do you feel that they have to come?
No, we've approved it, it doesn't have.
So, I mean, I would.
These two would change.
I mean, I guess I would agree, as we're discussing here, if something else.
And just to make it public for
Sure.
everybody and.
Yeah, no, I mean, so if something else occurs that may constitute a, a substantial or insubstantial change,
and
that
he
they,
agrees that,
that the applicant, or not the
Or it's
applicant
just
anymore, the developer,
are you agreeable on that?
owner.
It's a given. So, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think that's already established, but,
For the town, so that's good.
but to put on record, sure.
Sounds pretty, I'm not sure it's really necessary, but
I don't,
I
I
think it's
don't think it's
unnecessary.
necessary at
I
all.
think it's already,
It's already in the requirements with the
It's already in
with
the
the building
requirement.
inspector.
but as a public statement, yes, if there's anything else that is, that may or may not be substantial or insubstantial, that it is brought before us.
We agree.
Okay, so we
So
second it.
whether it's substantial or not, they come in before the board for other units.
That's right.
all right, you want to make a motion?
I make a motion, do we do it that way?
All right, is that a formal vote, or was that just a comment?
We've got a motion.
All right, hold on.
So,
Who made that one?
do you want me to articulate that, or?
Did you make that, Paul?
So I'll make a motion that, that any modifications that may be, substantial or insubstantial to the approved plan be brought in front of us.
I second it.
All those in favor? All those against? I don't think we have anything further to do on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the only other thing we've got is to approve the minutes from the last meeting, where all we did was just approve minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes where we approved the minutes from last meeting.
Is there
I
a second?
it.
All those in favor?
I make a motion that we close our meeting.
Second?
I'd like to make that even stronger, that we adjourn, actually.
Seconded the minutes.
Close, adjourn, whatever.
Seconded the,
We adjourn our meeting.
oh, thank you.
I most certainly
Who
do.
made the motion, though? Paul made the motion, or Lee? The minutes.
Oh, the minutes?
Yeah.
I made the motion for the
Who
minutes.
seconded?
I don't know, did Lee?
You made a motion, I seconded it,
Okay.
and everybody voted in favor of it, right? Have you guys voted in favor of the minutes, right?
Yeah, okay, so, did we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion strongly.
All those in favor?